Hey, happy Sunday, good afternoon. Jimmy Cosenza here reporting from the Jersey Shore, the beautiful Jersey Shore. You know, when you're in New Jersey, you basically have two options. Option A, you can jump on the train, good hour and a half train ride. It'll take you right into New York City, drop you off at Penn Station right next to Madison Square Garden, the heart of New York City. But for those of you who want nothing to do with New York City, option B, you go to the Jersey Shore. Now here's Point Pleasant, not too far from Asbury Park. They claim to have the cleanest beach on the shore. No dogs, no cigarette butts. A lot of beautiful women. They've got the boardwalk, great bars, restaurants, rides, games, and not one single scumbag. A really good crowd here. Peace and quiet. And from some parts of the shore, you can actually see the amazing skyline of Manhattan. So definitely check it out when you're in New Jersey. Check out the shore or go into the city. However, now the state of New Jersey charges $14 to go to the beach. $14 a person. Now, I'm sure there are spots you could probably sneak in where they don't have the checkpoints. And I'm sure you can go to the beach at night. But $14. When the city of Chicago hears about that, they're probably going to charge $25 to go to the beach. Shame on them. But it's worth it, though. It's beautiful. The sound of the ocean, the Atlantic. Now, let's get into it. We're going to talk about some of the crews of the Chicago outfit. Now, not everybody gets along, right? Some of these crews had beef with other guys. But today we're going to talk about where different crews would collaborate and work together, not only on scores, but actually murders. Now, this weekend, going on in Chicago, is the Taste of Elmwood Park. It's been going on 40 years. I highly recommend, if you're anywhere near the city of Chicago or the surrounding suburbs, check out the Taste of Elmwood Park, one of the best festivals you'll ever go to. A good crowd, delicious food. They've got the killer DJ, all kinds of good, talented bands, and bocce ball. I think today's the last day. Now, next week, something I'm looking forward to, my favorite festival, is the Taylor Street Fest. From Thursday through Sunday next week, same thing. Beautiful women, delicious food, a lot of characters, hot DJ, and all kinds of entertainment. 1000%, you'll see some of the Chicago outfit wise guys here. So check it out. But now let's get into it. We're going to talk about, and this has been discussed over and over and over, but going back to 1986, right? We all know what happened to Tony and Michael Spilotro. They were originally going to get killed in Nevada. A hit team was sent out to Arizona, to Nevada, to kill the brothers out there, but they couldn't really get the job done. So they resorted to Plan B. Plan B was they lured them to a house in Bensonville. And once they got to the house, they were brutally beaten, stomped to death. And then a different crew was responsible for the burial, the botch burial. And a lot of people, especially people in the know-how, I've talked to people who are in that life. They do not believe Nick Calabrese's testimony when he put all the heavyweights of the Chicago outfit, when he put them all at that house, claiming that Chicago outfit boss himself, Joe Ferriola, Sam Carlisi, Jimmy Marcello. He said little Jimmy Marcello was the one that set up the Spilotro brothers. Again, this is according to Nick Calabrese' testimony. Now, I was in court, bro. I listened to every single word that Nick testified to. Nick Calabrese said El Taco was there. El Taco was one of the men that had double duty that day. He was actually stuck around and participated in the botched burial. John Fecarata, one of the best wheelmen in Chicago, made member of the Chicago outfit, a killer himself. According to Nick Calabrese, Fecarata was one of the men that brutally beat and stomped Tony Spilotro. Nick Calabrese also testified that John No-Nose DeFranzo was there, another high-ranking made member of the Chicago mob. He said that No-Nose emptied out a gun that fell out of Michael Spilotro's pants, unloaded it, and then No-Nose wiped a smudge of blood that was on the wall. Nick Calabrese testified that it was Louis the Mooch that strangled Michael Spilotro with a rope as Nick was holding him by his ankles. He said Michael didn't really put up much of a fight. Nick Calabrese also said that brother Jimmy LaPetra was present when the Spilotro brothers were brutally murdered. Nick said that him, Fecarata, and Jimmy LaPetra were waiting at a Venture parking lot store, and it was Jimmy Marcello that picked them up in a real fancy van, and he dropped them off at the house in Bensonville. According to Nick Calabrese, Sam Carlisi was there as well. Sam was the first one to greet Nick when he walked down the stairs. He greeted him with a handshake and a smile, and Carlisi started busting Nick's balls immediately, making Nick and Fecarata, making them feel a little nervous. So again, according to Nick Calabrese, all these heavyweights were present when the Spilotro brothers were killed. Now, I found Nick Calabrese credible for the most part. However, there were a couple little white lies that I thought he told, which to me, that's reasonable doubt. Now remember, this is 2007. He's testifying to a murder that happened in 1986. It's a long time ago. And he said he swore out of the corner of his eye that Rocky and Felice was there. But defense attorney for Jimmy Marcello, Tom Breen, stood up, demanded a mistrial, accused Nick of lying, and said there's no way that Rocky and Felice was at that house in Bentonville because the FBI had him under surveillance at another location. Right? That's reasonable doubt. Now, some people, especially people in the know, people who are in this life who actually knew some of these guys, they say there's no way in hell Carlisi, Ferriola, DeFranzo, and a few others were all there together. That's a complete lie. Some people think Nick Calabrese put all these heavyweights, these mob bosses, these captains, he put them there just to make his story more powerful with the government. Remember, Nick admitted he was a coward. He was scared. He did not want to die in the electric chair. But what do you guys think? I want to know. Do you believe Nick Calabrese? Do you believe Joe Ferriola would be there? A guy like Sam Carlisi? A guy like John No-Nose DeFranzo? Now, two reasons I believe these men were there, in my opinion. Number one, I think they were so pissed off at the Spilotro brothers, especially Tony, they wanted to personally be there to either watch it or get their licks in. That's how pissed off they were. And like I said before, you learn a lot of things at these trials, things that you don't read about in books or in documentaries. A second reason I believe all those men were there is because this isn't the first time where Chicago outfit bosses and captains all got together to participate in a murder. This is kind of somewhat of an MO of the Chicago outfit. Chicago outfit's different, bro. This isn't like New York, Philadelphia, Boston. The Chicago outfit bosses were different. And several times, I'm only going to go into maybe four murders where several bosses were all present, very similar to the scenario at the Spilotro brothers. So that's what we're going to talk about. It's not uncommon for heavyweights in Chicago outfit to participate in a murder. So, for example, this lowlife here, right? Billy Dauber. He reported to, I think it was El Taco out of the Chicago Heights crew. I'm going to do a story on the Chicago Heights crew. There's men there you never even heard of. And I've got some really good resources. Also, his wife. I think her name was Charlotte Dauber. These two were like Bonnie and Clyde. No angels. Billy Dauber was a killer. He did a lot of work during the Chop Shop Wars. Him and his wife were coming out of a court building, and I think it was in Kane County. Obviously, they were cooperating. They were thinking about talking to the grand jury. And according to the testimony, according to Nick Calabrese at the Family Secrets Trial, this is where you had the Chinatown crew, the 26th Street crew, worked with the Wild Bunch, with the Taylor Street crew. Nick Calabrese testified that Ronnie Jarrett and Frank Calabrese spent a lot of time modifying a real fast work car that they stored at Ronnie Jarrett's mother-in-law's garage or at one of their warehouses. Once they got that car ready, they even gave the car a little nickname. But when Billy Dauber and his wife were coming out of the court building, this is their car right there. It was Ronnie Jarrett. I think he was the driver, and Frankie Calabrese rode the Daubers off the road and kind of pinched them in, blocked them in. And then you had Butch Petroselli, one of the Wild Bunch guys, started blasting Mr. and Mrs. Dauber with a shotgun. He pointed the rifle at Scarpelli and ordered him out of the car. Scarpelli, not fucking around, immediately got out of the car and finished off the Dauber brothers. So that was a hit team that consisted of Nick Calabrese, Frank Calabrese, Ronnie Jarrett, guys from the Chinatown crew, worked together with guys from the Wild Bunch crew, Butch Petroselli and Scarpelli. This was 2 of the unsolved murders of the Family Secrets Trial, 2 of 18. And John Drummond, Chicago reporter, just happened to be at a local diner down the street from this murder. Now, we'll go back, way back in time. I think this was in the 60s. This guy, William Action Jackson. First time I read about him was in the Bill Romer book. Bill Romer, as we all know, is an author and FBI agent who went toe-to-toe with a lot of these wise guys. But old Action Jackson was close with Sam Giancana. Sam Giancana thought that he was a snitch. So they brutally tortured this poor bastard. Mad Sam DeStefano, Satan himself, Angelo the Bull. I think Jack Cerrone participated in the brutal murder, torture of William Action Jackson, and Turk Torello. Now, this is the guy my dad was in the Marine Corps with. They fought in Korea. My dad had no idea that this guy had any Chicago mob ties. Years later, after the war, my dad ran into Turk Torello at a bar in Melrose Park. A couple of weeks later, he read in the Chicago Sun-Times that James Jimmy Turk Torello, I think it was out of Melrose Park, close with Iupa, was the upcoming boss of the Chicago outfit. This man would have been the boss, I think, before Joe Ferriola. But like Ferriola, his life was cut too short. But Turk Torello questioned if Action Jackson was a rat because he never gave anybody up. But that was a brutal. I mean, they stabbed this guy up. They shoved stuff up his ass. He shit himself. The guys were laughing that he was squealing like a pig. They were complaining how bad it smelled. But imagine, Mad Sam DeStefano, Angela Petria, Turk, and there's probably a few others I'm forgetting. When they got a hold of this guy, again, another Chicago outfit murder where several guys from different crews were involved. Now, here's another one. Same thing. They call this one the Strangers in the Night murder. This was 2 of the 18 murders that Nick Calabrese testified to. One of them was Vincent Moretti, the Chicago police officer, a burglar, one of the men that broke into Tony Accardo's house. This idiot was actually seen out and about wearing Tony Accardo's cufflinks that he stole from the home. Then his friend, who just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, he had Donald Reno. They call this the Strangers in the Night murder because when these two got jumped, they were lured to a restaurant bar that was closed. They got jumped by a couple different crews, right? Jimmy Marcello, Nick Calabrese, his brother Frank Calabrese. So imagine these two guys, Moretti and Reno, especially Reno, they got jumped, strangled, and they gave Moretti the business. They tortured this prick for personally robbing Tony Accardo's house and having the audacity to walk around with his cufflinks. So they stabbed up Moretti, killed Reno, and why these guys are getting killed, Nick Calabrese testified that Strangers in the Night was playing out of the jukebox by Frank Sinatra. So that was the nickname they gave the murder. Now we're also going to talk about Nicholas DeAndrea, another victim of the Chicago outfit associate. This guy probably could have been easily a made man. He was one tough son of a bitch. He was, I think he reported to El Taco, and boss of the Chicago Heights crew at the time, Al Pilato, was on a golf course. Some maniac who was hiding behind a tree came out, fired a couple shots. Didn't kill Al Pilato. He survived the hit, but all hell broke out with the Chicago outfit. And this man here, Sam Carlisi, was furious. Here's another example of Chicago outfit boss, captain, associates, and made members working together to kill a guy. You had Jimmy Marcello was involved. Nicky Calabrese was involved. I think Goomba was involved. And Nick Calabrese testified that when him and Jimmy were in jail, they were talking in code about how hard it was to kill Nick. Jimmy Marcello was saying how strong he was. They had a hell of a time getting a hold of this guy. And why Nick's going into details on his father was jumped and murdered by the Chicago outfit. His son was in court, just like Joey Seifert's and his brother. They had to sit in court and listen to how their father was brutally killed. That's when these trials are real, when the family members are there. But I thought for sure Junior was going to attack either Nick Calabrese or Jimmy Marcello. That's how livid he was. He actually spoke and gave a very powerful impact statement. But God bless Junior. Now, Nick's wife testified that she told the cops that when he got the call, he was a nervous wreck. He put a gun in his waistband, got in his silver Mercedes, left to go to a meeting, and was never seen again. Once they got a hold of him, Nick Calabrese said that when they had him in the car, Carlisi, now this is boss of the Chicago outfit, number one guy at the time. Iupa was in the can. He had more power than DeFranzo. Number one guy repeatedly kept cracking Nick in the head with the shotgun, getting him to talk. He wanted to know what happened to El Palato. Who took a shot at El Palato? That was an unsanctioned hit. And Carlisi got a little carried away, cracking him in the head with the butt of the gun. Nick Calabrese said when he went to check on him, he was dead. So that's another murder where you had the boss of Chicago outfit with different crews, different guys doing some heavy work. Like I said, the Chicago outfit was different, man. For the most part, they weren't involved in drugs. A lot of the guys went legit. Their sons did not become gangsters. Their sons became lawyers, contractors, restaurant owners, stockbrokers. The Boston, the Philly, the New York guys, their kids followed in their dad's footsteps. But let's do a quick recap, man. Before I forget, for any of you that are looking for a job, this is one of the best recruiters in the city of Chicago. You got Career Empower. These guys will bend over backwards to find you not only a job, but a career. So check it out. And let me know what you guys think. Again, going on right now in the city of Chicago. Wish I was there. You got the Elmwood Park Fest going on. I think today's the last day. Next week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you got the Taylor Street Fest. All the beautiful women. And we're talking about how the different crews would work together. Not only scores, I mean, these guys did a ton of scores together, but hits. The Dauber hit. These two are coming out of court. Here's the hit team right here. Two guys from Wild Bunch crew. Scarpelli, Butch Petroselli. Both of these guys were killed by the Chicago outfit. Scarpelli hung himself in the MCC, kind of like an Epstein. A lot of people think he was killed because Frankie Schweitz was on the same floor. And then you got two guys from the 26th Street crew, Ronnie Jarrett and Frank Calabrese Sr. They ran him off the road. Butchie and Scarpelli shotgun blasted him to death. Spilotros. Look at all the men that were there, according to Nick. Sam Carlisi, Rocky and Felice, Louis the Mooch, Brother Jimmy, DeFranzo, Louis Tomatoes, Feccarata, Taco, Little Jimmy, Joe Nagel. Nick went on to say that after the murder, Joe Nagel, Feccarata, and Nick Calabrese went out to a diner to have coffee, and Ferriola told them to cut off their gloves into little pieces because the FBI could get their fingerprints. Back then, they didn't know about DNA. Again, a lot of people think Nick Calabrese is full of shit. They don't believe that the Chicago outfit bosses would be present during that murder. But I think they were there. Just my opinion. Same thing, man. Going back to the early 60s, you got the brutal torture, murder of a suspected rat, William Axon Jackson. Some of these guys weren't even rats, and they got killed anyways. I mean, look at this guy. The worst of the worst. He ended up getting killed by his own brother and Tony Spilotro. They shotgun blasted his arm. I'm going to do a story from his house. Turk Torello. All these guys participated in that hit. Even Jack Cerrone out of Elmwood Park. Now, I forgot to mention Family Secrets Trial. The jury, they found Jimmy Marcello not guilty. That's 2 murders. Meaning they didn't quite believe Nick Calabrese that Jimmy Marcello was involved in this. Even though Jimmy... But yet, Judge Zagel, federal judge, who's known as a hanging judge, he overruled the jury's decision, their verdict, and believed Nick Calabrese and believed that Jimmy Marcello was involved. Come on, man. That alone, he should be able to appeal. And then again, different crews, different guys participating in this murder. Angelo Petrie was on this, Calabrese brothers, Marcello, Goomba, guys from the 26th Street crew, guys working with the Taylor Street crew, working with the Melrose Park crew, one big happy family. Al Pilato, one of the men sitting down at the Family Secret supper table. Boss of Chicago Heights crew. Carlisi wanted answers. They got a hold of this guy here, Nicholas DeAndrea, one tough son of a bitch, a man very capable himself. According to Nick Calabrese, him and Jimmy talked about how strong he was. But once they finally subdued him and got him, Carlisi got carried away, continued to crack him in the head with the butt of a shotgun, and kind of accidentally killed him. I'm sure they were to kill him anyways. But that's another example where Chicago outfit boss participated. He was actually hands-on in the murder. And again, his son. It's always sad to see the family members, the victims of the Chicago outfit. But that's my little story. If you guys like it, subscribe, hit the like button. I'm having some hard time setting up my interviews. I've already reached out to Kurt. He thanked me for saying some good words to him, which I meant. But I don't really think he's interested in doing an interview. Hopefully I'll see him at the Taylor Street Fest. I'm going to personally go up to him and introduce myself, apologize for talking shit about his uncle, who he's very close to. And I'm going to ask him if maybe he'll consider coming on my show. Because I want him on the show to talk about the other side of his uncle, the other side of Nick Calabrese. I asked Mark Jr., Mark Holtron's son, if he wanted to come out. He reached out to his father and some other people, and they don't think it's a good idea. And I got to respect that. But if anybody you know wants to come on my show and tell some stories or have a quick interview, please let me know. If you guys like my Chicago mob trial stories, hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends. And for you haters, put out the fucking cigarette, grab the old lady, and go take her to the Olive Garden, will you? Ciao.